What's up? So Peacemaker just ended, and here are some spoiler-free thoughts on the entire season. And just as a side note as well, we are going to be covering a full-length podcast, spoilers and all, some point next week. What's going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to our content, we create content like what you're watching right now, simply to educate and engage individuals like yourself on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. My name is Captain Nostalgia, and I have the privilege of being a writer, podcaster, and the film festival director here for Horrific Hope. If you guys would like more information about our upcoming film festival events, podcasts, more movie reviews like this, links to our social medias, Patreon, and most importantly, our mental health resource library, click the links in the descriptions below. As I said in the intro, this is going to be a spoiler-free look at the first season of Peacemaker, which is now streaming in its entirety on HBO Max. If you guys don't have HBO Max, I'll include a link in the descriptions below. Following the events of the Suicide Squad. Side note, if you haven't seen this yet, and you need to see this, because if you want to truly understand and love this series, you got to start here. And James Gunn does not disappoint. It made many top 10 lists last year, and for good reasons. It's funny, it's charming, it's action-packed, and it's got great character development. So following the events of this movie right here, we see this takes place 4 months afterwards. Peacemaker, Christopher Smith, played by John Cena, has been basically tasked with stopping an alien invasion with a ragtag team of Argus agents and a pretty different version of Vigilante. Arrow people, Vigilante was Adrian, I can't remember the guy's last name. A comic book fan, I'm deeply, deeply disturbed by that. But I'll get to him in just a few minutes. And how this series is named after Peacemaker, John Cena's character. 8 episodes of an Invisible Man. If you clicked on this video not expecting an Invisible Man joke, sorry. I have always kind of been on the fence about Cena as an actor. Seeing him last year in F9, I was like, this guy is just very stoic, doesn't show a whole lot of emotions. And then you get into the Suicide Squad, and I second guess that. Here in the Peacemaker, James Gunn basically is like teased where he was going to take the character in the original film, and just kind of expands upon that and just breaks your brain. There's so much I want to say about the character development of Peacemaker, aka Christopher Smith, in this. Meet him in the Suicide Squad. He's kind of like a brattier version of Captain America. And I understand with TV you get to have a little bit more liberties and freedoms than you do because it's a longer format. I gotta say, I've never been so close to crying so many times in a comic book show. And this right here, this series really solidified John Cena as a legitimate actor, in my opinion. He's no longer the goofy guy, he's no longer the WWE guy, but you get to see him not only play a more advanced version of his character from the Suicide Squad, but also you get to sympathize with him. And this show, with that sympathy, also feels very timely, and you just kind of get to see where he comes from, and I don't know how to describe it without getting into spoilers. Very done, and Cena just feels like a complete actor now, because this series allows him to do comedy, allows him to do drama, allows him to do action, and just also with the comedic. I'm sure you've seen the viral video of the 80 name challenge. You get to also see what he's capable of as a improvised actor as well. Cena really, really does. I don't want to say Cena steals the show, but there are so many surprises that Cena has in here as an actor, and a lot of those surprises come from his dramatic chops. I'll say Peacemaker really made me excited to see what he's going to do next. And Peacemaker honestly made me excited that I could see something from him in like a Oscar caliber film now because of this show. Now, some of that might be the writing with James Gunn, because James Gunn does write all 8 episodes. The writing in this is really slick. Gunn does not disappoint. And Gunn not only has a development for Cena's character, but all of these characters feel really fleshed out. I think one of the things that I really enjoy a lot about this is the fact that you're getting a lot of some of these films. Some of these characters were like tertiary characters in the Suicide Squad that are fully coming into their own in this one. I'd never thought that I would care so much about Argus characters, because if you've read the Suicide Squad comics, outside of Amanda Waller, characters like that are really disposable and expendable. Gunn begs to differ. For Holland, Danielle Brooks, and Steve Agee. I mean, this core cast of Argus members are just incredibly delightful. They're well acted, they're well written, they have great comedic timing, they have great dramatic chops, and again, so much of what makes these 3 characters go from just kind of background characters in the Suicide Squad to the forefront is the character development that we're able to see and how the actors are able to bring that development to life. It's a mixture of the performance, it's a mixture of the direction, and it's a mixture of the writing. All 3 kind of really bring out a great, terrific core cast. That's not to be outdone by the other version of Adrian Chase. Yeah, I knew I would remember it at some point. Played by Freddie Stroma. And Stroma has got to be, outside of Cena, he has got to be my favorite part of this series. I mentioned Arrow earlier. Arrow did their own version of Adrian Chase and Vigilante. I have my own qualms, I have my own beefs. Granted, it was one of the better seasons of that show, but Stroma just makes this character his own. And I've read Vigilante comics, and Vigilante in the comics, if you're curious, is not like this character. I really like the fact that we're getting to see a different version of a B-list character, and Stroma just really makes this character his own. He's funny, he's quirky, he has great chemistry with Cena. Their scenes have to be one of the foundational things that makes this series incredible. They're back and forth, but also that it's the kind of the way that they care for one another. And the narrative of this is just, it's so wild and crazy to try and explain. Even if you've never seen the show, I can guarantee I teased a little bit about what the show revolves around, and even you probably won't understand it or won't expect some of the moments that come in the latter half of the series. This series also too deals with racism, and actually a really clever way. Generational trauma and kind of how unresolved trauma as well kind of can linger and in unhealthy doses. I'm going to say about this series right now with spoilers, I'm going to go ahead and give my Rorschach rating, jump into mental health moments. But if you guys haven't seen the series, it's now streaming in its entirety on HBO Max. Go watch it, please. Rorschach rating scale, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a solid 4 out of 5. I think this is quite an exceptional series from start to finish. It has an awesome soundtrack. I have never been so close to tears multiple times in this series. I've laughed so hard. Cena's chemistry with Stroma, and also just so much of what they're able to do in this series is just so good. Some of the best writing that Gunn has ever done. The direction is wonderful. Even the special effects for this, sometimes I feel like for these direct-to-streaming shows, you can kind of be like, this is the weak point. But it's actually not. It's one of the stronger points. I've never done this before, but the longer I harp on it, I gotta bump this up to a 4.5. And so that's my final rating right there. The mental health moment. If you guys have seen and have completed the series, make sure that you guys comment below. Let me know what you guys think, or tweet to us on Twitter. It's @victimsandvillains. Let's go ahead and get into the mental health moment. If you guys are new to our content, mental health moment is where we examine a theme of mental health woven throughout the television show or movie which we are reviewing in hopes to, and we'll expand upon it for just a moment, in hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. Let me start off by saying this series deals a lot with generational trauma and unresolved trauma. That trauma is what we find out with Peacemaker's character and how the trauma of a childhood incident really affects him into adulthood and really kind of shapes his entire life. And he's always been kind of the victim because of said trauma. So my thing that I want to talk about for just a few moments is the importance of facing trauma and dealing with trauma, and not just finding violent or alcoholic alternatives to dealing with said trauma. Trauma is freaking hard to do. Face, it's hard to talk about, and it's hard because there's a portion of you that in talking about it has to relive it. There are definitely times where I've experienced trauma and I've had to, and it's hard for me to talk about. The reason that I got into doing mental health awareness was because I lost a friend to suicide, and I've spoken about that experience several times. And there are some times when you speak about something like that, that even though I've resolved that trauma, I'm having to relive that headspace and that pain all over again. Christopher Smith, I'm not going to give it away, but it does deal with a pretty severe traumatic incident that happens, and kind of the response of those who around him who witnessed this, and that kind of ultimately shaped him as a person. It really makes you see the character differently, but also it serves as a cautionary tale to not to face trauma in the way that he does. So my suggestion, it would be to seek out a counselor. Check out our mental health resource library in the descriptions below, because trauma, the longer that we hold on to it, trauma is like an anchor, and the more we hold on to it, the more it slowly brings us to the ocean floor. And the ocean is a deep, deep place. I know, it's hard. It's hard to deal with. It's hard to talk about, but we have to, the more we talk about it, the more healing eventually comes in place of that trauma. Check out our mental health resource library below. And with that, thank you guys, and make sure that you guys subscribe to our podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel here, and follow us on IGTV. That way you guys never miss a hope-filled moment. We got some cool reviews coming for you guys this weekend. And we're also going to be having our full-length podcast on the Book of Boba Fett. We have Peacemaker in the works, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and another Nicolas Cage podcast. So make sure that you guys click the links right here, and have a great day.